Today's guest is brought to you by Reynolds Family Dentistry of Sellersburg. You need $1 million smile for those championship photos, and that's exactly what you'll get with Reynolds Family Dentistry. Welcome back to Indiana Sports Radio, of course, coming to you from the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios. Jim Coyle with you as always, and now joined by a special guest, Jeff Oliphant, a member of the 87 National Championship basketball team, and more importantly, father of Sophie Oliphant, a member of the Indiana volleyball team. Jeff, thank you so much for joining us, man.
Hey, well, thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. It's always great to reminisce about some good times in Indiana basketball history, but also some things about the future. Look forward to that. Your daughter, Sophie, obviously a member of this volleyball team, which has a great Indiana basketball connection, by the way.
Yeah, obviously Sophie and then Brian Sloan, my teammate and roommate, his daughter Megan is a senior there this year. So, yeah, it's great.
We're going to get to all that. We've had the opportunity to cover the volleyball program quite a bit here lately. Coach Steve Ayer doing an incredible job, and their games are starting today. They're really the grand opening for Wilkinson Hall. Great place there. But going back into your career, Jeff, you started out in a little bitty town in Lyons, Indiana. Man, I've been there. There's not a lot there.
No, it's pretty small. You know, it's no stoplights, great people, but it is a small place.
And you guys gained some notoriety. Your teams had a lot of success back in the high school days.
Yeah, we were fortunate. We had some really good players, you know, and a lot of guys that put in a lot of hard work. You know, on a weekend, if you came out to the high school in L&M, you'd find a crowd full of people just playing pickup games and hanging out, just watching. And it was more of a social event throughout the year. And then, you know, when the season kicked in, you had a bunch of guys that were really focused on playing and doing well.
And you would rightfully, if you did, you would be understandable if you carried a grudge against Wayne Gretzky, because all these many years ago, yourself and I think a teammate were scheduled to appear on the cover of Sports Illustrated, and you were bumped by Wayne Gretzky.
Yeah, I don't know if that was the truth or legend or what, but I've heard that before, so I don't know.
That's a pretty cool story no matter what. I just go with it, man. Just go with it. It's a pretty cool thing regardless. Yeah,
it's cool. And, hey, Wayne Gretzky, who better than to have him take your place, huh?
Exactly. But then, fortunately, you moved on to Indiana to play for the Hoosiers and Bob Knight, a great era of basketball there, too. And you really, your time there, you crossed a lot of different, not generations, but eras of IU basketball. I mean, you were on the 87 National Championship team with a great run, of course, with Steve Alford and those guys. But you also crossed into that next phase of IU basketball with Calvert Chaney and Todd Leary, a good friend of ours who's on each week, and Pat Graham and all those guys. So it's really cool to see those two different eras of IU basketball touch each other.
Yeah, I was really lucky. You know, I redshirted a year, so I was there 5 years. You know, my first year there, seniors were Courtney Whitty and Winston Morgan, Stu Robinson, who were, you know, 4 years or so older than me. And then here it was 5 years later, I was leaving, and we had, you know, that class that came in with Calvert and Todd and Pat Graham and those guys. So I had, you know, probably 8 or 9 years of an age group of people that I got to be around. And you know, I still talk to guys like Courtney. I still talk to him, and I still talk to guys in that freshman class too.
And we have a lot of former players on, and Brian Evans was on just recently again, and he talked about that thing of when he came in, the group of guys that were there, and then when he went out, the group of guys that was there, and it was such a great span and touching two different eras of basketball at IU, but also the guys that you get to stay in touch with throughout the years, and that's probably some of the best memories that they have.
Yeah, that's probably one of the best things about it was your teammates, that and the fans, and just being able to, you know, go to an event or go to a function and see guys, you know, that are older than you and younger than you, and having played there and spent time with all of them. So yeah, it's a fun thing, very fun.
And now, of course, your daughter Sophia is a member of the Indiana volleyball program. Steve Air there trying to build a program akin to the basketball program, a powerhouse. He's played for Penn State, so he knows what that's like, that national tradition type of thing. But he's really recruiting some great athletes. And if you look at this roster, the connection between former great athletes from a parent standpoint is you can't miss it. I mean, I've talked about the guys on the IU basketball program, and there's another guy, a father who played for Judd Heathcote, another played for the Fab Five, but Emily Fitzner's mom played for Stanford. So it's not just the guys; it's a great lineage of championship quality athletes, and you can tell by the talent on that floor.
Yeah, I think you see a lot of that. Kids that grow up in households where you have former athletes that. There's a lot of talk. There's a lot of stuff going on there about watching sports and talking about sports and being involved in sports. So I don't think it's surprising at all when you see, if we go to an IU game and all the moms and dads that are there that have played and contributed, done things for some really good teams.
And when all those years that you spent in the gyms as yourself an athlete, did you imagine one day spending that much time in a gym watching volleyball?
Actually, at L&M High School, you talked about it. It was a small school. We had one sport for girls at L&M High School, and it was volleyball. So that was it. And in 1985, they had a really good volleyball team for 1985 volleyball, and we enjoyed it. We had fun with it. So that was really the only girl sport I went to watch in high school. So I was, very happy when actually both my daughters played volleyball, and I've enjoyed it a lot.
And I've only had one opportunity to really talk with Sophia during media day, but I can tell she seems like she might have been a character growing up.
Exactly. She, from a very young age, we would have people approach us out of the blue and make a comment about things she was doing and what was going on with her. She's always had that about her, just kind of that kind of a personality, and you never knew what was going to happen when you were at home and what was going to happen when you came home from school. You never knew.
And just funny, because I asked some of the teammates, they actually named somebody else, but I pay attention when I talk to these athletes, and just talking to her, watching her expressions when we were talking about you or ask a question about you, I could just see, I'm like, oh my gosh, this girl's going to crack me up. You can tell she's just got that in her. Does she get that from you, or does that come from mom?
I don't know where she got it, to tell you the truth. But she's got that kind of that personality of where she just has fun, and she works hard, but she can also sit back and have fun and have a laugh. And I'm going to miss having her around home. I mean, I'm glad all three of my kids are there. But she's the last to leave, and we had a couple years where she was the only one there, and we had a lot of fun times, good times together. And so I'll miss having her around all the time.
So you've got three kids at IU at the same time right now?
Yeah, I've got Sam and Abby. They're both in Kelly School, so I've got them all three there, living within about a half mile of each other.
Well, you'll be spending a lot more time in Bloomington, I would imagine.
I hope so. I'm hoping that I love being there, so I'm hoping I'm there a lot here the next few years.
That would be awesome. But, of course, you'll be in Bloomington today in Wilkinson Hall as Indiana with two games on the volleyball side today to play. And then they've got two more tomorrow. So they've got a busy weekend ahead of them, Jeff. But and talking about Sophia, and when did you notice that she really had – because there's a Division I athletes and then there's the rest of us. And you can tell the difference between those type of athletes. When did you see that, man, she's kind of good?
Well, there was a thing. It wasn't even volleyball. It was a soccer thing. She was playing with a bunch of girls that got together just for fun to go play on a little indoor thing. So we went to play in this league, and she was probably 8 or 9 years old, or maybe 10. And we got there, and the guy said, we don't have enough teams for a girls' league, so today your guys going to play against a travel boys team. And I thought, oh my God, we're going to get beat 100-0. So the game started, and we got beat 10-9, and she scored 9 goals, and she was just knocking kids all over the place. And I remember sitting there with my dad, just kind of looking at each other like, oh my gosh, what kind of kid is this? So I think that was one of the first times I thought, she might have a little something different about her.
And a lot of that comes from having a competitive drive, and that's not something I think you can coach or teach. You just have it or you don't. I know exactly what you're talking about. I've seen it in other kids and other girls, no less. It seems to stand out more with girls when you see them on the court, especially with boys, because you're not expecting that. But when you do, it's like a wow moment.
Yeah, and it didn't hurt having older brother and sister at home in the backyard getting she'd get pounded and everything we did, and she never backed down. She always competed with them and challenged them and fought them, and she'd get her butt whipped maybe, but she never really went inside and run away from it. She was always right involved and right back at it. So.
And being a former D1 athlete, I mean, you played at the highest level. You played for Indiana basketball. You won a national championship. What can you and what do you or what have you tried to pass on to Sophia or any of your kids, but for that matter, and would pass on to any kid as they're growing up to try to get them to be the best that they can be, basically?
Well, I just kind of told them all to do what they like and have. You got to have fun with what you're doing, and they all do. But you got to work at it. And there's a mix between fun and work. And we worked extremely hard with Coach Knight. And when things were going well, it was the greatest time ever. And sometimes when things weren't, it wasn't so much fun. But I've just told them all, you got to do what you enjoy, and you got to work at it. You're not the only kid in the world. There's a bunch of other kids that are there doing the same thing, trying to get the same things done that you are, so you've got to compete and be the best you can at everything.
And like I said earlier, we have a ton of former basketball players on the show all the time. On your team, who was the character on your team back when you were playing?
Oh gosh, I hung out well. The Big E, the late Big E, Eric Anderson was about as much fun as anybody to hang out with, and that was kind of my last couple years with him, and then Pat Graham come in. But I lived with Todd Meyer, I lived with Brian Sloan, I lived with Steve Isle. Had great times with those guys. Still talk to Courtney Woody frequently. But yeah, I think the Big E and living with him was about as entertaining as it could be.
And you look back at those teams, and as we do, it makes me think that seems like the teams that the Indiana fan base loves to see on the floor, built by Indiana kids at the heart of it, and you sprinkle in some talent from outside to go along with that, which is basically what you guys were. You had a ton of kids from Indiana that were very successful in high school in Indiana. Then you had in Steve Alford, a great shooter. Then Coach Knight brought in a couple of those guys via the JUCO route, and it just made for obviously a championship team.
Yeah, that 87 team it just meshed really well. The guys got along great, and people knew what their roles were. And the funny thing is, you're playing in those games, and you see all the guys that you played against that went on and played in the NBA and had long careers, and we didn't really have those kind of guys, the NBA guys that played a long time. Steve played a little bit, and Dean was in the league later on, and Keith was in there for a little bit, but none of them were in there a long time, like a lot of guys we played against and beat. And you got to get the credit for that. It's got to go to the team and what you could do together, and the coaches and what they were able to put together.
Yeah, and I look at today's Indiana team. I know in the beginning Archie seemed to try to land some of these elite talents from all over the place because the college basketball landscape has really changed a lot. I mean, you get the Dukes and the Kentuckys who recruit 5 stars only, but then you got teams like Texas Tech or Virginia last year who built on defense, built on guys that were not a 5-star, and showed you that you can actually win this way because the one and done, those guys haven't really done a lot in college basketball as far as winning championships. And I look at what Archie's trying to do now with a huge Indiana-based roster with late here. You've got Trace Jackson-Davis, of course, and Armand Franklin now, Anthony Leal and Trey Galloway. Do you see that he's trying to build up that same kind of team that resembles a team that you were on?
Kind of looks that way, and it's really fun to watch Indiana guys come put the Indiana jersey on. Really, that's great. Guys that you may have heard about play here in the state. And it has changed. Back when I was playing, AAU was not a thing. Social media wasn't a thing. So when I met Ricky Calloway the first time when we got to Bloomington, that was the first time I'd met Ricky. First time I saw him. Nowadays you're going to run across the guys you play with and against probably every weekend on the AAU circuit, and it wasn't there back then.
And you talked earlier about how that team really meshed well together. Does having a lot of those guys from Indiana on there help that cohesion and help that chemistry?
I think it helps some. Yeah, I mean, there's guys on that team in particular, Steve, and he was obviously a huge part of that thing the entire season. But then you had Daryl and Ricky and Keith, and there was a lot of guys sprinkled in from the Midwest that weren't exactly Indiana, but throughout the years there's been so many Indiana guys that just have been so big a part of all the teams that have won there, and so it's a good thing. I mean, hey, it's Indiana. If you go to school in Indiana, you should want to go play at Indiana.
Exactly. Of course, now getting back to volleyball, Steve Aird in his second season with the Hoosiers. Man, just spending time around him. First of all, he's an electric light plug that's always on. He's ready to go. But it seems like he has really got that program heading in the right direction. Are you happy with where that volleyball program is headed?
Yeah, we went to matches when Sophie was younger, and we'd go watch IU play, and obviously when she started in the recruiting process as she got older, and the conversations would come up, and IU was struggling. I mean, Ashley Benson, obviously another basketball connection there, which was a great player at IU, but other than that, not a lot of success overall. And Coach Aird has really brought a lot of energy and enthusiasm to it, and those kids are, they work hard. The very first time we met him, we both kind of, me and Sophie and my wife, we kind of walked there thinking, man, that guy, he's ready to roll, and this is the kind of thing you want to be a part of if you're a player.
Absolutely, and it starts today. Wilkinson Hall, the Hoosiers volleyball team kicks off action at 12:30. They're taking on, I believe that's Florida International. Then they play Marshall at 8. Back tomorrow with games against UT Martin and Santa Clara. Are you guys spending the weekend? Since you have all these kids here, you've got plenty of places to stay in Bloomington, Jeff.
We are. We're going to spend the weekend there and hit all of our favorite places and enjoy the time and see all the kids and enjoy some volleyball.
Looking forward to it. Thanks a lot for joining us. We'll see you here in a little bit when the games get started. Jeff Oliphant, member of the 1987 Indiana national basketball team, and father of Sophie Oliphant, a member of the Indiana volleyball team, who's about to play here in a little bit. So come on out to Wilkinson Hall. Jeff, thank you so much. We greatly appreciate it, man. Looking forward to talking to you again maybe during basketball season.
Hey, that'd be great. Hey, I appreciate it. Thank you very much.
You bet. Thank you very much. Hey, we got a lot more coming up here on Indiana Sports Beat Radio. Back with more from the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios right after this.